Hi there, Christian Henson from Spitfire Audio here. I often get approached by record producers interested in putting orchestral elements on their tracks, and I detect a certain reticence to doing this for fear of needing orchestral chops or to understand the theory of music in the respect of using orchestras. The short answer to the question posted in the title of this video is, of course, anyone can put orchestral on their tracks, and it's not just about taking virtual instruments and trying to make them kind of sound cool. There are character libraries available to us that have the zeitgeist, albeit in an orchestral sense. We have a range of libraries called Albion which behave more like synths than they do virtual instruments. So I'm going to create an orchestral track with a song, and this is a Spitfire first. An artist called Alev Lenz, an incredibly talented singer-songwriter who recently did an album with SA recordings that was largely a cappella. I'm taking that and I'm going to do, I guess, the way I'm approaching it is it's almost like an orchestral remix of her track. And the library I'm going to focus on today as everything you need to create orchestral music within your song is the all-new Albion NEO, which is bursting with neoclassical zeitgeist. It's not just about providing you with some violins, it's providing you with some much-wanted character and attitude. So here's Alev's track that I've ripped from Spotify. What I've been doing is just kind of jamming around with it, looking for points of inspiration, different sounds. Instead of running the whole thing down, I'll let it unfold as I add all of the different layers. I've got Alev's track. I'll add some reverb to it as I'm playing it. I've been working with this Segler texture, which is a mixture of brass and strings. And you'll see it oscillates between the brass and the strings. So it's great. It gives this sense of ebb and flow, which is fairly random. But what I'll probably do is I'll probably work up the arrangement as that as a sketching tool, and then I'll actually override the oscillator and physically control it with the modulation wheel. I've got a drone and a couple of woodwind ideas, but that's where I'm at the moment. So let's just have a quick listen to Alev and then just bring in some of these just conceptual elements.
From far they have traveled, these winds unraveled the threads of my past dreams. Ooh, ooh, ooh. From far they have traveled, these winds unraveled the threads of my past dream.
I've also got this woodwind element that I wish to introduce, kind of Penguin Cafe thing, so let's just see what that sounds like.
Ooh, from far they have traveled, these winds unravel.
But in order to do that, because it's an arpeggiator, we're going to need to get this all clicked up. So I've just grabbed any old drum sample and I'm going to play that along with Alev's track, using the waveforms of the track as a guide of where the kind of ones hit. Next, we're going to lock everything to SMPTE so nothing is affected by me creating the tempo track, and I'm basically going to link one in every 4 beats, so the one of every bar. As it's just vocals, no drums or anything, it doesn't have to be Tower of Power tight. So first, I'm going to basically lay down what's called a Segler texture. These are very much the hybrid side of the orchestral offering in Albion NEO. So they're orchestral sounds presented in a kind of synth format. And I've got this great sound that I'm going to use as basically a blocking tool to block the harmonic language and journey of the piece.
From far they have traveled, these winds unravel the threads of my
Right, now for our Michael Nyman Cafe Orchestra, some woodwinds that I'm using with the all-new arpeggiator within our eDNA engine of these Segler textures.
From far they have traveled, these winds unravel the threads of my past dreams. From coast to coast, they've collected thoughts, they carry loads I've never heard of.
Right, now for some slightly more pure orchestral sounds presented in a different interface. And this is how your orchestral content is displayed. These are the different articulations or playing styles. So you can switch between short or say pizzicato. And the only thing I think is really important to utilize when you're working with orchestral samples like this is this dynamic fader, which is just basically my mod wheel assigned to this. So this crossfades through the different dynamic layers we have recorded. As an option, which I use, you can also use expression, and that's just a gain stage, it's just basically volume, and I use this to balance whatever I'm playing against the other instruments. The other great thing about Albion is that it's recorded in ensembles, not by sections, so it's pre-orchestrated. You don't have to worry about the violas versus the cellos, the violins versus the seconds and the basses. What's more, Albion NEO is recorded divisi, so it's a small band split into half for even more kind of intense and emotional sound. So you'll hear straight away by just using these expression faders and playing just some basic pads that this great kind of emotional component starts building within the track. Now I'm going to use one of my favourite sounds, flautando, which we've been developing at Spitfire Audio for years now. It's a kind of fluty, harmonic-like tone. I'm going to start by using both my right hand and the expression, and then I'm going to need to switch to my left hand and use it more like a synth pad. So what I'll then do is overtrack the controller data over the top of that later on.
From far they have traveled, these winds unraveled the threads of my past dreams. From far they
I'm a massive fan of folk, horror, and there's just an element of that about this track. So I'm going to draw that out with some slowly detuning strings.
Are we troubled, brother? What are we troubled, mother?
Right, I'm going to now go back to that flautando track and program in the expression data. Now, when programming orchestral music, it's really important to try and empathise with the instruments and how the players play them. And very rarely will a professional violinist or cellist or even bass player give you just something flat, just like a straight tone. They'll often shape it into the notes that they're playing. This is what I use these controllers for, to give it this all-important human shape, to be able to program in a change in dynamic not just at the beginning of the note, but throughout that note's duration. next up is one of my favourite tricks, which is on the top of a beautiful bed of strings is a technique known as harmonics. Just like you get on a guitar where you rest your finger over a string to produce a pure harmonic tone that's a couple of octaves up, you can do that too on violins and cellos. And what I love doing is placing those an octave or even 2 octaves above the main bed to give it all sorts of magical, fairy dusty, sparkly stuff. It's sounding like a beautiful icy glacier now, and in order to break things up I want to add just a little bit of momentum, bit of movement. I don't want to do it with the orchestra because I don't want it to become too kind of posh orchestra-y. So fortunately with Albion NEO we've got this amazing selection of Brunel loops that are performed by many of the very talented people I work with at Spitfire Audio. These loops are designed to sound like loops that you find off records, but without the kind of copyright complications you may face. So they're stemmed out, so the different elements you can extract and use. Maybe it's just a guitar or a drone or a pulse, or indeed the entire loop. These are your get out of jail free sources of inspiration. And this is where you'll find the loops, and this one pulls up usually with the menu assigned. What this does is it presents you with the different loops, but at the tempo they were recorded at. So if you go up in octaves, you'll hear there are slightly nuanced different versions of the loops. And then you'll get your stems here. And if you click on this button here, you'll get the menu up and it'll be exactly the same layout, but it'll sync to your host tempo, which in this case is quite an audacious one. So let's just kind of jam around with some of these loops and see what works.
From far they have traveled, these winds unraveled, the threads of my past dreams. Ooh.
These are more than just inspiring. I think actually this violin riff that I think it might be Homai and Kat playing, I think it's going to become central to the piece. So let's try this at the beginning. I'm concerned it's getting just a little bit paddy, so I want to add some real variety into the strings. The beautiful thing with strings is they have so many different nuanced approaches to the way they play, and this is what really makes something orchestral, these different colours that you can introduce. So I'm going to get rid of the flautando here and introduce super saltasto, which is a technique where they play a little bit further up the neck, and it creates, again, this beautifully aching kind of gorgeous, sad sound, very kind of almost primordial, nothing kind of posh about this sound.
They have traveled, these winds unraveled, the threads of my past dreams.
Right, now this string kind of phrase that I'm using, the violin phrase, is fantastic, but it does sound like we're just re-triggering the same phrase all the time. So what I'm going to do is layer it with some brushed, soft consordino shorts. Now, shorts within the context of the Albion library, you control just with velocity like you would a synth. And these are beautiful. Instead of da, kind of sounds. They have a real beautiful kind of tapered shape to them. They're also playing consordino, which means with the mute on. It's a little plastic thing that goes over the strings and gives it this really kind of slightly quieter but more silky sheen. And these aren't affected by your dynamic controller. These are velocity controlled. Oh, beautiful sound.
From far they have traveled.
Okay, so let's make a feature of this riff, and in fact I'm going to start the whole piece with it. The very beginning of the sample sounds a bit loopy, so what I'm going to do is alter the automation to just soften its entry. It's so easy with orchestral elements to allow a piece to become very muddy because orchestras are by nature very rich. So again, we'll strip back elements and finesse them before trying to find alternate colours. As I was saying earlier, the thing about orchestras, about these nuanced colours, but also I think it's really important to imagine that orchestras are made up of separate players. There's ebb, there's flow. It's not all, 40-odd players just kind of cranking it out continuously. Think of them as different choral voices that you can bring in and out. Okay, I'm going to make more of these brush shorts as well, so let's copy these over to the outro.
From far they have traveled, these wings unraveled, the threads of my past dream.
Okay, now I want to start building the string arrangements up. So I'm going to have another look at these beautiful saltasto strings, which I think are the best saltastos we've ever made. With larger orchestras, you get this kind of silky sheen over the whole thing. So the difference between saltasto and flautando, say for example, or consordino, you can't hear as much. But with this small band split into two halves, A and B, it's even more apparent, even more unique a sound. Try some pizzicato, which are plucked strings, and in the basses they can provide almost a subliminal movement without us feeling that we're really kind of chopping around with the basses, if you know what I mean. Just little pulses that come in and out. Okay, if you recall with the Brunel loops, I was playing some bass elements. I'm going to have another look at those to see if we can't motor the piece along a bit, again, without becoming too orchestrally kind of clever.
They have traveled, these winds unraveled, the threads of my past dreams.
Right, this may seem mental, but what I'm going to do, because this loop is fixed to a fixed pitch, is I'm going to recreate a track for each pitch that I want to go to, each bass note that I want to go to. And because these loops automatically track to the host tempo, all I need to do is just simply tune the instrument down to or up to the various different bass notes. Okay, just a little bit of a tea break, and just been fiddling around with some forward motions and been using these Brunel loops, just these percussion loops here. And also this sound here, which isn't a loop, but I've made it into one. Tremolo. Bit of low cut and just general boost. and delay. We've also found this amazing kind of, I don't think it is a voice, but it sounds like one.
From far they have traveled, these winds unraveled the threads of my past dreams. From far they have traveled, these winds unraveled the threads of my past dreams. From coast to coast they've collected thoughts, they carry loads I've never heard of.
So basically, we've got to start working with Alev's vocals now. I get the stems in, and then I want to actually really properly engineer this general pad that I put all the way through. But one thing before I forget, I just want to see if I can add just a little glissando string in there.
Mother,
Right, time for a listen through. Just giving it a little bit of a break, so a bit of snow deafness hopefully has cleared, and I want to just basically finish off the arrangement and then import Alev's stems to start an initial mix. So let's just see where we're at.
ooh. trouble, mother.
I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 notes. So this brass pad that we started with, we're kind of losing that versus everything else now. So that's something I need to look at. I've basically got kind of 2 chorus points. These points.
Ever heard of?
At the moment, it's a beautiful string pad, and I want to put some movement in there, some kind of classic string movement. And also here. That's interesting. The woods, if I do it from, so they actually catch all 3 of the notes, there's this weird triplet thing, which I thought was a clever cross rhythm. It just sounds like a total car crash. So what I did then actually sounded kind of interesting. So if I just do that. Okay, there's going to be a way of sorting that out. And then the end just feels like I've just stopped my computer and the delays. So I just need to find something a little bit more elegant at the end. So let's eat the frog and do the movement first. That's going to be the most difficult because I'm going to have to get in there and have a little dig around. I'm going to keep Alev muted for now. I'm going to have a look at this woodwind part because whilst I thought that the cross rhythms were clever, I think it's just a bit calamitous. So let's see if we can't make it a straighter rhythm and maybe just use 2 notes for it to ostinato, which is a kind of repeated phrase, just to kind of go between, almost like an arpeggiator, but just a 2-note one. Let's see if we can just make it just sound a little bit more realistic, not that we'll hear it. And yes, you can play 2 articulations simultaneously. Click on one and shift click the other. Voila. Just make sure they all join up. Once you quantize them, things can kind of shift around. Sub bass for this bit. Let's get up an EXS. Let's get some silk out. Consort. Right, the end just sounds like I've just gone stop on my computer, so I'm just going to finesse that a little bit. Ooh, I'm really loving that drone at the end. It has a kind of Nick Cave, Warren Ellis kind of bent to it. I'm going to see if I can make more of a feature of it. Well, certainly maybe at the beginning of the piece so that we have an arc starting with the same sound that we end with. Now what I want to do is return to that original Segler texture. If you remember, it oscillated automatically. It was great because it gave shape, but it wasn't responding to the music. So what I'm going to do is actually strip it of its automatic oscillation and assign controllers to it so I can control it within the context of the piece and Alev's vocals. Just a little bit more intuitive if it's kind of... It looks unintuitive, so up is left, down is right, but sonically it works for me a little bit better. So soft strings here. So Alev recorded this piece live with the Grammy Award-winning Roomful of Teeth, and because it's live there's a lot of spill, so there's little I can do where separation is concerned, but in the context of an orchestral piece what I'm going to do is a very quick mix pass because my ears are absolutely battered, just scooping out elements of the vocals and some of the other instruments so they have their own space, that we can hear them, they sit on top or behind each other. Okay, so finally, a bit of mastering at the end, so we give it as good a chance as it possibly can at this stage, presenting it back to Alev. I hope she likes it. Let's see what she thinks. Right, we have good news. Alev approves of the track. She actually likes it a lot. Only had one note, really, which was she wasn't a fan of this percussion loop. Felt that it got a bit scratchy. And it's interesting she should say that because it is something I've been struggling with to kind of find a place for, when to bring it in, that kind of stuff. So we're just going to get rid of that. And because I've not visited this track for about 2 days, I had a listen with my morning coffee, and the impact of the orchestra is somewhat diluted by its omnipresence. So I'm going to be a bit bold and just try and break it up a bit. So what I'm going to do is investigate some of the more synthesized sounds created with these synthesizers here in my modular over there, the Stevenson Steam Band, to see if we could just pull the orchestra out so that when it comes in, there's a real lift. And finally go in and just do a real sculpt of the different elements. Okay, I just want something kind of quite intense. The Stevenson Steam Band, which are in two categories, electronic and neoclassical. Let's have a look at just starting with, I've given a little signpost for myself. It's one of the perks of the job, is you can title stuff so that you remember it. Okay, so what I'm going to do is just lasso all of Alev's stuff, and then we can just kind of hit solo just to try this out. So let's go in here.
Ooh, from far they have traveled, these winds unraveled, the threads of mine, past dreams, from coast to coast, they've collected thoughts, they carry loads I've never heard of.
The theory behind it, I think, is right. It's not the right sound, but in the sense of just by giving it a lift, when the orchestra comes in, it becomes a bit more of a moment. So let's just try and find another sound. Let's go into electronic. Let's alien radio station. I think it's got quite a lot of stuff going on.
Threads of mine, past dreams, from coast to coast, they've collected thoughts, they carry loads I've never heard of. Ooh.
Let's try band. And conveniently, I think this is going to help me get out of the woods with some of these interesting harmonic bits here. Again, having just a little bit of a refrain.
Streams from coast to coast, they've collected thoughts, they carry loads I've never heard of.
I think we're winning. And just try and do some sculpting. So I'm going to first do it. I'm going to get rid of these extraneous tracks, and I'm just going to first do it without Alev, and then I'm going to just try and do, although it's all recorded live, I'm just going to try and see if I can eke out some stuff of just making the backing vocals a little bit more distant at points. So that's a nice little tidy there. Right. That's me, pretty much done. I'm really happy with this experiment, and really thank you, Alev, so much for allowing me to attempt an orchestral remix at your wonderful track. If you want to find out more about Alev, the link is down below, as is the link to stuff about Albion NEO. I hope this hour or so that you've spent with me has allayed any fears you have about putting orchestral on your tracks. So one of those for Alev would be much appreciated. Do subscribe if you haven't done. Lots of exciting stuff coming up, and ding that bell if you want to be notified the next time we put a video up. Thanks as always. See you next time.